Okay, we should now be live on Facebook. Commissioner Windmiller, if you're ready, we can start.
I am. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. On behalf of my co-chair, Herb Simmons, and I'd like to welcome you to the Security Subcommittee meeting of the Bi-State Board of Commissioners on Thursday, May 14th at 12:30 p.m. May we have a call to order, please? And a roll call.
Commissioner Windmiller.
Present.
Commissioner Simmons.
Present.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Costello. Commissioner Cox. Commissioner Galladay. Commissioner Beach.
Present.
Commissioner Zimmerman.
Here.
Commissioner Holman. And Commissioner Gully.
Thank you, Myra. I will note that no speaker cards were submitted prior to the meeting, so we have, as far as I know, no member of the public who's interested in speaking at this time. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes of the February 25th, 2020 Security Subcommittee meeting. I do have, before I ask for a motion, I do have one suggested change. On page 2 of 8, under the WSP security plan presentation paragraph, it's noted that Commissioner Cox noted that page 3 of the minutes of the January 8th security subcommittee meeting noted that there would be an approval and a vote on a final plan. He stated he sent an email to Commissioner Windmiller asking that the plan be broken down into sections for that vote. Well, I do remember that Commissioner Cox spoke about that issue. I didn't receive any formal email from him or anything in writing, and so that needs to be corrected in the minutes.
Thank you.
Are there any other corrections or additions or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
Simmons, so move.
Renell Brown, second.
Thank you. Myra, do we need a roll call vote?
A voice vote's fine.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Any abstentions?
Yeah, would you kindly have the minutes reflect that Commissioner Zimmerman abstained? I was not at that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
So noted.
The next item on the agenda is the ride and abide policy. I would ask that Stephen Barry, Kevin Scott, and Vern Summers provide comments and information for the committee. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and start that. Good afternoon, commissioners. I'd like to report out on the ride and abide policy that's been diligently worked on over the last 6 to 7 months to coincide and reflect a process, an administrative process that supports the code of conduct. The code of conduct signage was previously discussed and approved verbiage-wise and distributed, has been placed on the system at platforms and on a rail alignment. The effectiveness being placed also coincided with the removal of old signage. So we had considerable amount of what I saw sign cluttering along the alignment. So we kind of knocked out 2 birds with 1 stone. So effectively, we placed the new signs, removed old signs, and then have also increased the locations and the size of the sign to more appropriate levels of distinction along the alignments. How that coincides with the ride and abide is that the ride and abide is the process that allows Metro to administratively bring compliance back online on its system for mostly nuisance abatement issues. Nuisance abatement type issues are those types of issues that sometimes plague a system and bring about a type of character or behavior or other items that the system should not have to sustain. So as we look at some of the information that's shared in the packet, I would encourage you to look at the report, the board report on the analysis portion. You'll find that on page 2. You'll notice in here that we did do some data analysis to support why the Ride and Abide program should be very effective, should be a very effective tool for what we currently experience along the system. You'll notice that on here that out of the 6,257 citations that we studied, 41% of the citations were issued to repeat offenders. And out of the 41%, these are those that received 2 or more citations. And in further analysis, 20% of the total citations who received 4 or more, and 8% with 10 or more, with a maximum record of 43 citations issued to one single individual. We are hoping that by using the Ride and Abide program specifically to address the type of disorder that is difficult to do just from the law enforcement perspective, that this is one of those abatement programs that could help reorganize the social and order atmosphere that we're looking for, not only on our rail side, but also on our bus side. Now we have some information on here and how it reflects on the Metro Transit system. But you'll notice that on the page 1, as far as being respectful to MTS passengers and to authorized persons, comply with lawful orders and directives, obey any instructions on notices and signs duly posted, and provide accurate, complete, true information. What's interesting about a Ride and Abide program is in the past, they sometimes have been called an exclusionary program. Well, we're not necessarily looking for an exclusionary program here at Metro Transit. What we're looking for is a compliance program to assist with those types of riders that we know that are concerned. We have our transit dependent who also mix in with those that are choice riders. And what we want to do is make it inclusive so everyone can enjoy their ride, obey the rules, pay the fare, and get to their destination. So with this type of program, what we have built, and if this is accepted, is a administrative process to support an ongoing issue that Metro has been having, which is repeat nuisance abatement type behavior. If someone were to receive a citation, it could be as light as, may we help you? You may have to get off at this line, purchase a ticket, you can jump back on, and we're on our way. That could be something as easy as that. However, if it were to escalate to where someone is smoking, if someone is eating, if someone has repeat offenses, the citation allows Metro to come back and have contact with this individual and explain and have a process behind it that might take a day of exclusion from, or a day without riding Metro, all the way to a week, and so on and so forth, depending on the nature of the incident and how many times they actually are involved in the incident. You'll notice that, again, we have started to keep more in-depth data. Now, we broke this out specifically just to give you a prime example of why we feel that this is conducive to our overall Metro program. But we figured that out of the hundreds of thousands of riders that we experience on Metro, they're good riders and they're trying to get to their destination. However, a lot of transit agencies experience what we call the top 10%, which is your unfortunate nuisance behavior and your repeat offenses. With doing very little research, but putting together information that we've looked at over 6 months, we could plainly see that a Ride and Abide would support the overall effort that not only is the new transit security provider, G4S, our transit security specialists, and then coinciding with our secondary law enforcement and our contract law enforcement. This would be widely used through many different functions. This is where I'd like for Kevin to jump in and discuss a little bit about the back side of the house. That was a little explanation on the front side of Ride and Abide, but let's talk a little bit more about how it seems out in the field, so you can get a better understanding and clarity on that portion of it. Kevin, you mind jumping in here for a second?
Sure. Can everybody hear me? The process will allow for us to really surgically affect certain continual repeat offenders, as Steve said, that we on a continual basis, whether it be the transit security specialists, the contract security, uniform security officers, or law enforcement even, we continually deal with these people. And the way this is structured will allow any layers, any person that's involved in a layer of any of our security elements, any of the 3 layers, to issue a suspension notice to these repeat violators on the system. Once that's issued on the system, that has to come back to the public safety office within 24 hours with a full report. We will actually conduct an analysis on the suspension and determine whether the suspension by the field authorized security element was justified or it needs to be modified. And so there are checks and balances in place with this process. We're not just relying on our uniformed security officers, our transit security specialists, and law enforcement to solely vet and suspend people from our system. Once it has gone through that first review after 24 hours, the person receiving the suspension can also request a review, either by myself or via the committee. The committee will actually review any suspensions that are longer than 30 days. Initial suspensions can be an in-person or a phone review, where they can provide evidence regarding the applied suspension, the length, any impacts this will have on their life, any hardships this will create. So I'm trying to draw the picture for you at this juncture that this is an entire process that's set in place, and not just relying solely on a field deployed security element to make the final decision on suspending somebody from our system. Is that fair, Steve?
Yes, that is. And on top of that, we are going to train heavily, not only our staff, but our security and our partners in this effort on the Ride and Abide program. And we're also going to introduce it to the TSMs from the bus and rail side to further elaborate on and to increase our numbers in regards to how many folks can also assist in this process. We have already developed, and I think Kevin's in receipt of code of conduct cards that will be utilized and handed out. There you go, Kevin, thank you. These cards will be utilized along the process. It has all the pertinent information and the rules right there for our use and to further educate. So the importance behind a Ride and Abide is not always necessarily just to change behavior or to affect behavior. It's a program that also provides data analysis for us in the long run to better understand our ridership. It's important for us to do surveys with our ridership to understand what their safety and security needs may be. But we also need to talk to those that may be involved with never paying their fare or always doing certain things or what time of night they ride our services. These types of information are solely our responsibility. And what we need to be in the habit of is that even though we can get part 1 and 2 crimes from our law enforcement partners, the sole responsibility of getting crime stats is ours. I'm sorry, can you still see me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So it is very vital to directing crime statistical work and breaking it down into the subject and then understanding if our deployment, our tactics, and what we're focusing on is really achieving the goals that Metro would like to see. And the only way to do that is for Metro to start getting deeper into the crime analysis business. And by doing a ride and abide, it allows us to do just that. That's how we can then pinpoint and drive and answer very specific questions to our board members, to our constituents, to the efforts that we mingle with the operational department, in the sense that we have to work together on how we're going to achieve these goals. We want you to hold us accountable on those achievable goals, because it's the only way we're going to achieve those goals. So through the ride and abide, I'm looking forward to establishing a lot more information. We are with the Security Subcommittee and the BSD board. We're available for any questions.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Proceed.
You mentioned about the committee will review any of the complaints that may be filed. Who would sit on that committee?
Yes, sir. That'll be a general manager from public safety. It will be the general manager from MetroLink, general manager from Metro Bus, a citizen from the from the Metro Transit Missouri area, and a citizen from the Metro Transit Illinois area.
Very good. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Are there other questions? I just wanted to say I appreciate this.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Brown, the question I want to ask was, when you're talking about passing out the information with the cards and all, how did you say you do that again? Are you going to do that?
Well, this is just, if I could step in here, ma'am. So the ride, in conjunction with the ride and abide, as Steve mentioned earlier, we have a new code of conduct that is streamlined and what we think is much more effective than what we had before. And all of the new placards are going up on the trains and around our properties. So one of our G4S security guards made a recommendation one day to our communication staff as they were out and about on the system, that it would be really nice to have something as an informational piece, as a PSA, to start handing out to our ridership so that they can get used to this new level of conduct that we're requiring. A lot of it does mimic what we had in place, but it's streamlined. So the uniform security officer from G4S suggested a baseball type card that has our contact information on the front, and then also a clear, definitive bullet points of what the new code of conduct is on the back. And so behind me, I have a lot of these things ready to go. There's probably 1,000 of them sitting here that we will start pushing out to our own transit security specialists, which are our own in-house Metro security staff. And then in addition to that, law enforcement, as well as G4S uniform security guards. With the, I would like to go back and mention one thing with the work on the ride and abide policy in conjunction with WSP and our own Metro team here in public safety. Law enforcement was involved with this as well and fully vetted what we've presented and proposed to you today. So they're well aware of what we're seeking and what we're asking for.
All right, thank you so much. That's great.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, I would recommend that one of those cards be distributed to each of the commissioners for our to look at also.
Yes.
I think that would be very helpful. In fact, I would say that while I appreciate that you have 1,000, and that's a good starting point, I think the wider the distribution of those, the better, particularly among the ridership itself.
Yes, ma'am. We agree.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions if now's a good time.
Sure.
I think this is a good plan. I think, hopefully, I think this is going at some improving the overall experience, not only for our riders, but for our operators. I just, when I first got placed on the board, I know exclusionary policies were it kind of came up, and it was more controversial than I anticipated. So I would just point that out. I don't know how everyone else on the board is going to feel, but there was definitely a back and forth on it. I guess My question, anytime we have a policy like this, there's a couple big issues that always come to mind. One is notice. And I think the card and I think some of the issues you talked about address that, but the other is enforcement. And I guess if the police departments are aware and on board, that's a good thing. But if we suspend someone or revoke their privileges, you know, at the end of the day, what is the enforcement mechanism of that?
Commissioner, so
ahead.
there's a couple different approaches on that, if I could. One of them being forward thinking and very advanced as we talk about technology enhancements to our CCTV in regards to doing facial recognition at certain locations. But more, I think what you're referring to is much the same problem that we run into with the trespass program, which is if someone has trespassed from the system or from Ride and Abide, how do you identify these people if
Sure.
they decide to jump back on? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I guess the issue is if Justin Zimmerman gets banned from using, you know, the system, you know, how is that actually going to work? And in reality, maybe the answer is, you know, a lot of these troublemakers, our operators know them, they're frequent, they can identify them, and maybe that's just the fact of it. But, you know, anytime we have, I think it's one, identifying, and two, you know, I don't want people that are serious threats or causing, you know, huge problems to be on the platforms, be on the trains. But I think we also need to be aware of, you know, if it's going to involve more police interaction with guests or with customers, that's something that just, you know, I know is a sensitive subject. So I just want to make sure we're thinking this through.
Well, let me answer just a little bit of that. So in prior days, without facial recognition tools and whatnot, we do obviously tape. Our CCTV cameras are live on the platforms, and then we tape other activities. So we do have the ability to identify who they are. And you are absolutely right that our security personnel, law enforcement personnel, our operations personnel know who our frequent flyers are. And back in the day, there would be postings of the individual's identification, identity as far as facial. However, we are building a current technical program for the backdrop of this overall program that will include this information to where the individuals that may get caught in this type of program are those that need to be further evaluated in a sense that we're not looking to necessarily use this as an enforcement tool only. What we're looking to do is use this as a compliance tool. And if you use this as a compliance tool, it has a different connotation than you do as an enforcement tool. What we're going to provide the field staff with is all the information they need, which they probably already know, but to be able to identify those frequent flyers that unfortunately may disrupt our services in ways that we're looking to improve on.
No, that sounds good. I think we're on the same page with that then. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? I had, first of all, I want to say thank you. And I share some of the, I wouldn't say concerns, but, you know, things that we need to be aware of moving forward, which is making sure that this is more used to increase compliance as opposed to being a sledgehammer. And I appreciate the sensitivity to that. I will say that this is something that I've heard riders and I've heard stakeholders and I've heard many people support. And I think there's a difference between ride and abide and exclusionary. And I'm comfortable with that as well. I did want to say I was reading through the policy and there was, I didn't read it super carefully, but I think you want something on the actual ride and abide policy itself on the first page under A, prohibited conduct. Under number 6, 1, 2, 3, 3 line, second line down where it starts with loud noise, threatening. I think the word there is not abuse, but abusive, harassing, or offensive language. So you might want to make sure that you've gone over the policy with a fine-tooth comb, make sure that there's no errors in it, but that should be abusive as opposed to abuse.
Ma'am, did you say abusive?
Yes,
Okay.
sorry. You can't have abuse language. I think it's abusive. I'm assuming that that's modifying language.
Nope, I think you're spot on, Commissioner. And we only had about 17 different sets of eyes look at this, so I think I can appreciate that coming from someone with an education background.
Is that what they teach at WashU? I don't know if that's right, Rose.
Hey, I worked there. I didn't go there.
Well, you're spot on that one. That's true.
Are there other comments? Are there other questions of the team? And first of all, thank you to all three of you and to all of our partners for putting this together. I know I was involved at the very beginning, and I know what an arduous process it is. And I also know that I personally want to make sure that we're sensitive to the constitutional rights of every writer, whether or not their behavior is good or not. And I know that's been reflected in this document, but I also want to make sure that people who are repeat offenders, get that information and know that behavior is no longer going to be tolerated. So I'm appreciative of that.
We look forward to moving from this phase and going into an arena that assists with education and compliance, and looking forward to working on that 10% ridership that sometimes can be construed as the one that makes it an uncomfortable ride, and then dispelling the truth that that transit is dangerous versus being actually a very safe mode of transportation. So it's very exciting for us to look forward to an administrative tool that we've never enacted before. And I'd like to say that our beta process will come in short to where we'd like to be able to report back to you in a few months with something very substantial
Thank you.
and worthwhile.
There are no other questions or comments. I would ask for a motion to approve the ride and abide policy.
Simmons,
And
so
again,
moved.
Second, Vernell Brown.
thank you. Myra, do we need, is this a roll call or a voice vote?
Sorry, I
Voice vote.
voted. Just a voice vote will be sufficient.
Thank you. All those in favor of the current policy, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. The next item would actually normally be that we would move to an executive session to discuss a couple of items. But we have determined that the items for the executive session agenda will not be addressed at today's meeting. So therefore, the only executive session item for approval will be the minutes of the February 25th, 2020 Security Subcommittee executive session meeting. And if there's no discussion required on this item, we can forgo today's executive session, move forward in an open session with taking a motion and roll call vote to approve this item. Do I have
Commissioner
agreement from
Windmiller,
the board on that? Yes.
I do have some information on our Emergency Operations Center activation over the last 8 weeks, and I'm not sure if you would like to hear at this portion or after you close this portion of our meeting. I do have some information, hopefully to shed some light on just some activity that maybe the subcommittee would be interested in hearing about.
Was that originally an item, and I looked to Barb and Talby, was that an item that was supposed to be discussed in executive session, or could it be discussed in open session? It's not on the agenda.
Steve, I'd have to ask your opinion on that. Do you think it requires an executive?
Actually, I think it does.
Okay. I do have a Commissioner Windmiller. I have one other personnel issue associated with some of the information I sent last night. that is confidential that I could also update on as well. So I apologize for the last minute, but it would be appropriate to be under executive session, and we could do those two items right now if that's your pleasure.
That's fine. So are we also then going to, I would move that we go ahead and approve the minutes of the subcommittee executive session motion or meeting here, unless you think we will need to reconvene to vote on something else.
No,
That's the question I'm raising. I'm working a little, flying a little blind here because I didn't know about these other two items.
no, I don't require a vote, but it is an important information item that is personnel related. And I want to be sure that at least the board members that are present understand that direction.
All right, then I ask that we approve the executive session subcommittee minutes from the February 25th meeting in open session, and then we won't have to come back to open session. That's meets with the board's approval. And we'll take care of the other two items in executive session. All right. Do I have a motion to accept the minute to approve the minutes from the executive committee of the February 25th, 2020 meeting?
Yes, Vanilla Brown.
Thank you, Vernell. Second.
Simmons, second.
All those in favor, please
Aye.
signify.
We need a roll call for this.
Oh,
Sorry.
Commissioner Brown,
yes.
Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
Commissioner Winmiller,
Aye.
Commissioner Galladay, Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Zimmerman.
Please note that I abstain. I wasn't at that meeting, so I have no knowledge of the minutes.
So noted.
Thank you. Now, do I have a motion that the committee go into executive session for the purpose of discussing legal, confidential, or privileged matters as permitted under Bi-State Development Board Policy, Chapter 10, Section 10.080, D1 Legal, D2 Personnel, and D10 Security?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Second.
Commissioners,
have
if
a
we can
roll?
hold- I'm sorry, go ahead.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Zimmerman,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
Commissioner Winmiller,
Aye.
and Commissioner Beach.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Brenda, did you have?
Okay, if we're ready to move into executive session, please give me a minute and we're going to stop our live stream. Thank you. I'm live on Facebook. We're still waiting for our interpreter to come back. So he should be with us momentarily.
Okay.
Connecting to audio. Brett, are you set?
All set?
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
We
I'm
all
sorry,
ready?
is the recording started?
Is the recording started?
There it is. It just showed up. Thank
Yes,
you.
it is.
Okay, good. I'll call the meeting to order of the Board of Commissioners Nominee Committee on Thursday, May 14th, 2020. Good afternoon, everybody. Meyer, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Simmons,
Present.
Commissioner Winmiller,
Sorry, present.
Commissioner Zimmerman,
Here.
Commissioner Brown,
Here.
Commissioner Beach,
Present.
Commissioner Galladay, Commissioner Holman, Commissioner Cox, Commissioner Gully, Commissioner Costello.
And we have a quorum.
Yes, there is a quorum of the committee present.
Very good, thank you. The meeting today is a recommendation to discuss the slate of officers for the 2021 for Bi-State Development Board of Commissioners. At this time, I'll open up the discussion for a proposed slate of those to be nominated to the full board. Is there anybody who'd like to go discuss this?
Yeah, Herb, can we start just to make sure I'm on the same page? Barb, can you walk everyone through? I think they're on the same page, but just what the requirements would be for next year with respect to the bylaws of what state would have to occupy what position?
Right. Well, you want your chairman and your vice chairman to be alternating in Illinois and Missouri, as well as treasurer and your secretary. No individual can serve more than 2 successive terms in any one office. So those are generally the background requirements.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's what I had in mind. I just wanted to confirm.
And Barb, those terms of office are 1 year, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? So kind of, I've been going over this, so if nobody has any recommendations, I'd just like to just throw this out there, that for that term, I would like to have Rose Windmiller as chairperson, Justin Zimmerman as vice chair, Secretary Vernell Brown, and then myself as treasurer on a slate for those seats. Anybody got any discussion?
The only I asked this last year too, and I assume they were aware of the meeting, but has anybody heard of anybody who's not here that is interested? They were aware of this meeting, they had the opportunity. I just always ask that question to see.
I was getting ready to throw that out there. I've not heard from anybody myself.
Yeah, I haven't either. And I think they would have called in or let one of us know if they were interested in running for a position. So I think we're safe. I just wanted to raise the issue in case.
And I agree.
Herb, is that, are you making a motion?
I was just asking for a discussion. I didn't know if anybody else, I'm glad Justin brought that up, but I can put that in a form of a motion to present that to the full board.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Meyer, will you do a roll call?
Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
Commissioner Windmiller,
Aye.
Commissioner Brown, I'm sorry, Commissioner Brown, you are muted.
Yes, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Commissioner Zimmerman,
Yes.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
motion passed.
Okay, with that, what we'll do is that slate of commissioners will be presented at the regular board meeting for the entire board on Friday, June the 26th, with the new slate of those officers to take effective immediately upon the adjournment of the meeting on June 26, 2020. We've already had the motion and second. It was approved. At this time, no other business. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
And a roll call.
We could actually do just a voice vote if you prefer.
Everybody in favor, say aye.
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 Oppose? I hope nobody abstains. So thank you. We appreciate everybody. I know it was a little bit longer afternoon, but I managed to get out of here by 2 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay
Stay
safe.
safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.